After 20 years, America's longest war is coming to an end. And that's America's war in Afghanistan, which is scheduled to be quote unquote over as of August 31st, 2021. Now, one thing I think worth highlighting is that then President Trump signed a peace treaty with the Taliban on February 29th, 2020, over a year ago, stating, and he also campaigned on this, that we were going to pull out of Afghanistan, hand the country back over to the Afghans, and that we would do so by, I believe it was March or May of 2021, as long as no harm came to any U.S. citizens or service members. The Biden administration came in and extended that from, again, March or May, whatever it was, to the August 31st date that we're at now. And much to, I don't want to say everyone's, but a lot of people's surprise, actually pulled out, much to the chagrin of the military-industrial complex, I'm sure. Now, there's a lot of back and forth on the actual pullout, the execution of the plan being done poorly. Conservative folks on the right saying that they're not against pulling out, but it's the way that we pulled out. Folks on the left echoing some of the same, but also highlighting the fact that we actually pulled out, which is something that the Trump administration promised to do. It's something that the Obama administration promised to do. It's something that the Bush-Cheney administration that got us into this fucking mess also promised to do, and nobody has done until now. And it definitely has been messy. You know, we all have seen like videos and pictures of folks literally trying to hold on to the outside of planes to get out of the country and like go into like the wheel mechanisms and try to get on evacuation planes just to like flee the country before the Taliban inevitably took over, which everybody knew was going to happen, although everybody didn't expect it to happen within like the 10 or 11 days that it actually happened. There's a tragic suicide bomber attack that did kill almost a dozen service members and dozens of civilians. That was supposedly attributed to a terrorist group called ISIS-X or something like that has a beef with the Taliban, supposedly. And I'm definitely not going to pretend to know military strategy and what the right way of doing it was, what the wrong way of doing it was. But as an American citizen from the outside looking in, although I concede the fact that it could have been most likely done in a better way, you know, one of the biggest criticisms that I see is, you know, how, you know, we first should have evacuated folks, left the military to the end, then, you know, blown up all our like buildings that we built and bases and gotten rid of all the weapons instead of leaving all that for the Taliban to just pretty much take over. And I've seen videos, I don't know how true they are, how real they are. I don't know if we did do that, if we didn't do that. The criticism is that we didn't do that or enough of that. And I've seen videos of like stacks and stacks of money and weapons just like left there, which if that's the case, that's obviously, at least from my perspective, wrong. Like that strategically, that's like, why would you do that? Why would you leave things behind that could be used against us? On the flip side of that, there is the inevitability of this is what was going to happen. Taliban were going to take over. We always knew. We just didn't think it would happen in 10 or 11 days. But it was a foregone conclusion. The Russians, the Soviet Union under Gorbachev were there for a decade. Couldn't do anything. The British were there for years. Couldn't do anything in terms of deterring what the main issue there is, which is a haven for terrorism. Alexander the fucking Great had issues there. We were there for 20 years. And I'm not going to say that it was for nothing, because our heroic military men and women served there and defended our freedoms with their lives. And we haven't had another 9/11 happen. And that, I would imagine, can be largely attributed to the fact that this haven of terrorism was being occupied for the past 20 years. And I've had conversations with a friend of mine that has served over there, and he pointed out that from a military perspective, it's also a strategic geographic location to be in, which is why the Russians tried occupying it, or did so for 10 years, why we were there for 20, why the British were there. You could deploy to anywhere in the world more easily from there. You're also close to China, close to Russia, geographically speaking. And that's definitely a perspective to factor in. But is it worth weighing against having a forever war? I don't think any of us know the answer to that. I don't know if there is a clear-cut right or wrong answer to that. I do know the costs for the past 20 years, what those have been, and I'm going to outline some here that I pulled from an article that, again, I'll link to in the episode notes for you guys to check out. In terms of human cost, and this is deaths, not to mention the limbs that folks have lost overseas, or there in Afghanistan, rather, from the U.S. and other fighting forces from across the globe, as well as civilians there in Afghanistan, but just deaths, not factoring in also like psychological damage, PTSD, etc. American servicemen and women killed in Afghanistan as of April 2021 is 2,448. U.S. contractors killed in Afghanistan, 3,846. Afghan national military and police killed, 66,000. Other allied service members, including from other NATO member states, 1,144. Afghan civilians, 47,245 killed. Taliban and other opposition fighters, 51,191. Aid workers, 444. Journalists, just covering and getting us information of what's going on over there, 72 journalists. That's in 20 years. That's a cost that has to be factored into that decision making. Financial costs. It's estimated that as of 2020, the United States has debt financed, meaning increased our debt, put all these costs on the country credit card, $2 trillion with a T, $2 trillion directly in fighting the Afghanistan and Iraq war, half of which is attributed to Afghanistan alone. And it's estimated that by 2050, when you factor in interest, that amount rises to $6.5 trillion by 2050. So that's, as of now, stopping the war, not spending any more money there. We already owe $6.5 trillion in interest for the financial financing. And I say that to highlight the fact that there are other interests at play that you can't turn a deaf ear to, that you can't turn a blind eye to. There is a military-industrial complex. There are those that profit from war. That $2 trillion that we spent so far, it goes somewhere. You know what I mean? It's not like some arbitrary figure that's like a calculated cost. Those are $2 trillion of taxpayer money that has gone somewhere. Contractors, strategists, weapons and munitions, the military itself, and all the cottage industries that support and that have a clear and huge financial interest in the war continuing to go on. And listen, I don't want another 9/11 to happen. Nobody does. But there are different perspectives to solving the same issues. Like, I went once for work to this like seminar thing that they had us go to. And a takeaway that I got from that is the fact that there are different departments, let's say like within finance, for example, will have and are equipped to solve problems based on their skill set. So if there's an issue within the company, the marketing department will find a marketing strategy to solve for that issue. The sales department will have a sales strategy to solve for that issue. The IT department will have an IT strategy to solve for that issue. The development department, so on and so forth. The operations team, so on and so forth. Similarly, the military itself has a militaristic, strategic, geographic location strategy for dealing with the issue. Academics are going to have their take on the best way to solve for the issue. Politicians and diplomats are going to have their diplomatic solutions for the issue. I think, as in with most things, it's not an either or. It's a combination of different strategies and different teams working together. There's no like panacea, and clearly not with fucking Afghanistan, which again, dating back to Alexander the Great, people haven't been able to solve for the quote unquote issue that is Afghanistan. But it does seem, and I do feel, that it is time to try a different set of solutions there. Again, every president from Bush and Cheney who got us into this mess, Obama, who exacerbated drone strikes in lieu of, not putting, boots on the ground and more folks in harm's way. But that has its own set of issues because like drone strikes, which were exacerbated under Obama, but then continued to be used and exacerbated under Trump, has like its own wacky, crazy issues. Like, it's not like I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Jarhead, where, you know, you have a sniper team of 2 people, the person pulling the trigger and the spotter. And the spotter is like looking at the person and has them in their sights and tells them the wind speed directions. And then the sniper graduates his rifle to like, you know, 2 knots to the left because the wind is blowing X amount, blah, 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 etc. And then they get the okay from command, and you see the person there in your sights, and then you pull the trigger and boom, you kill your target. Like, drone strikes aren't like that. Drone strikes literally work with metadata. It's this person, this terrorist that we know has used this cell phone before. We believe this cell phone is theirs, and it's in this building right now that also has 40 other people there. But the metadata tells us that the terrorist that is our target is in this building. And, you know, there's a school next door and, you know, a bodega down the block or whatever the fuck. But the metadata tells us that he's there. So, boom, drone strike. Just kill dozens of people to get that target. That's why, like, the quote-unquote collateral damage, which is other people that weren't involved dying because of a drone strike, is something like 90% or something like that, meaning that you kill the terrorist, but you know, you also kill 9 other people that, you know, men, women, children that had nothing to do with anything. That has its own set of issues. And that's, like, again, exacerbated under Obama and then carried on by Trump. And fuck, that doesn't seem right either. And when it's all said and done, it's like this snowball effect of policies and ideas that result in tens of thousands of lives and trillions of dollars. It's like, is that the game plan? Is that the best we got? I hope the fuck not, because then the solution inevitably becomes just being the occupiers of the world. Who has the means and resources and people enough to occupy the whole fucking world then? And that's definitely not the world that I want to live in or leave to my kids. And like my boy Forrest Gump said, that's all I got to say about that.